ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at three very important issues. Number one, the Farmington River Declaration 2023. That is the agreement bringing together about 20 political parties signing an agreement for an election-free and transparent election. We're also going to be looking at the election voter registration registrar who was sacked by the NEC, that's the National Elections Commission. She was for administrative reasons, among others. We're also going to be looking at the way officials, top government officials, take leading role in campaign rallies. What does that mean? Is it ethical? Is there any law against that? We're going to be looking at all that. And luckily, I'm feeling Sino today, so I'm in my Sino County jersey. Go Sino. Well, joining me to discuss all these, we have the experienced Duke. His friends call him. That's Dr. Abdullah Dukle. He's a writer for The Perspective. That's the time people I started reading, especially during the war. Dr. Duke wears many hats, and he's also a professor. Welcome to the show, Doc.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Let me also welcome Mr. Thomas Kanne, who's joining us from Durham, North Carolina. Mr. Kanne, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. Good to be here again.
From the city of brotherly love, I have the guy who takes very keen interest in numbers, Kalebo Gonglo. Mr. Gonglo, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday. You are muted, sir. Mr. Gonglo, you are unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. It's my pleasure to be here again to share the stage with Dr. Du and Mr. Kanne.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. On Tough Talking Thursday, we talk tough. This time, I want us to start with a very important topic here. Our viewers, if you have not done so already, please share the show, invite someone, and let's talk tough. Earlier this week, we had the Farmington River Declaration 2023. Accordingly, in 2017, these 20 political parties came together to sign an agreement for a free, fair, and violent-free elections. This agreement was ratified or revised this year. So we have 20 political parties, including the ruling Coalition for Democratic Change, signing this agreement, committing themselves to a free, fair, transparent, and violent-free elections. ECOWAS was represented, the United Nations, and where all signatories had witnesses. Let me start with you, Mr. Kanne. What do you believe is the purpose of this, and really what does it mean to you?
Thank you very much, Dennis. Like you said, it was back in 2017 when the first version of that agreement was signed. And 2017 was critical in the sense that that was the first time Liberia was having a transition of a sitting president, a democratically elected president was going to transition power to another democratically elected president. I think since the 1940s, we have not had that situation. And it came on the back of Liberia coming from civil war. And then we had the election in 2006 and 2011. But again, in 2011, the incumbent won. So coming from that background of that historical transition with the issue of, being a fragile country, the OME, I think at that point in time, had left Liberia. So there was a need. Policy leaders and policy decision makers and stakeholders thought that there was a need for political parties to be able to come together, to be able to sign a pledge that we will smoothly go through this transition, which was first going to the election. Based on the outcome of the election, of course, then we could go to the transition in terms of who was going to receive the baton from former President Sirleaf. So that was something we had to go through. I know that the Governance Commission, for instance, play a major role in working with the Elections Commission to be able to put that agreement together and work with stakeholders to be able to bring these parties together at the same event where they went, I think this week, to go and sign. But looking at what the intent was originally and why they had to go back to go and re-sign this document, I mean, looking at it now, you see it from different angles. First, still as a fragile country, we have economic fragility, we have fragility due to maybe crime and all other things. There was a need for political parties to come together to say, what was done in 2017, we want to repledge our commitment to go to elections without any violence. The other side to it is that how long are we going to continue this? Because normally we say our democracy is a fragile democracy. At what point do we get, and then all political parties get to the point where they denounce violence and say, whether we sign an agreement or not, we are going to go through this peacefully. So maybe that's something we get to in a bit of time. But I think overall, coming from the background that I explained, I think one good thing is that it puts the political parties in a position where you cannot be the one to instigate violence when you have put your signature on this document. And this is the expectation that we have for all of them so that we can have a peaceful election. So I think we commend the UN, we commend ECOWAS for working with them to be able to bring this together. Let's not also forget that we are a success story for the UN. We are in the ECOWAS region. They all want to see Liberia continue to move forward rather than retrogress. So we commend all of the stakeholders that came together. We can only ask them to be able to commit to what they signed at the Farmington Hotel a few days ago.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo, why is this necessary? And what is, without this agreement, what's going to change?
Well, here is what I would say. Based on what I know, and I would say based on experience as well, election is a process, and it's not just the Elections Commission that is responsible for all electoral activities. You have the judiciary, you have the Ministry of Justice, meaning the police, you have the Ministry of Internal Affairs, local government, you have even Ministry of Education, the use of school facilities. So my thinking is that when you want to have such agreement, to just have political actors come together and agree maybe to avoid violence is not holistic enough. It's not just all to it. Because there are many triggers that can also give the appearance of unfairness in the process that could even motivate or trigger a negative reaction in the form of violence or a shouting match, between political activists. So take, for example, if a particular political party want to sign, saying you wearing Sino t-shirt, let me set the example on Sino, and the local government denied them maybe the access to use some public facility, that could trigger violence. Okay, so what does the Farmington Agreement seek to address? They say addressing all of those issues that the political parties, be it the ruling, the opposition, must have unfettered access to all public facilities. Are there mechanisms put in place in that agreement? I haven't read the agreement, that's why I'm raising those issues. To say, hey, this is what we commit ourselves to do, not just avoiding violence, but also bringing all of the institutional government that have a critical role to play in the election. I would like to see the Ministry of Justice also be a party to that agreement, that this is what the police will do, and the police must be seen as a very fair actor in the process. Take the University of Liberia, just in recent time. Akaras Gray walked past the police station with a garrison with more than 100 people marching, which was a clear form of public demonstration. The police did not act. They did not have a permit to march in such huge number. The police did not. The Minister of Justice did not. That was so unfair. It presented the Minister of Justice as being, sanctioning what Honorable Gray did to the student of the University of Liberia. Okay? So, I mean, that's part of what I'm talking about here.
Right.
So let's have agencies of government that have critical role to play at this time from now to October 10, also involved in that. Don't just push it on the lap of political actors.
Right. So my question is this really necessary? And there are already laws preventing election violence and calling for free fair. Why do you need a separate agreement?
So for me, I think it's window dressing the issue here. The fundamental issue is let's hold those who are responsible for implementing the rule of law, holding up the laws of the country. Let's hold them responsible. Let's strengthen the process. I mean, that I think essentially is what I'm trying to argue here. That holding political actors, particularly opposition parties who do not virtually have no power over the police, have no power over the Ministry of Internal Affairs, have no power over the Ministry of Education, have no power over the Elections Commission, because they can only take complaint there. Making them to sign the agreement and say, you tell your activists not to do this, not to do that. I think that's in the issue. The fundamental issue is the trickles of violence in the electoral process is the appearance of unfairness. And usually that's the police or / the Ministry of Justice, the judiciary, and the Elections Commission. They should be a part to that.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, you were with President Salif when she started this. What really is this supposed to accomplish? And minus this agreement, is it going to make any difference? Or somebody told me when I look, I said, this is a waste of time, waste of money. In fact, why are they not doing it at the ministerial complex and they are doing it at Farmington Hotel? UN is involved, ECOWAS is involved. What is this all about?
Really, I'll go in the same direction as Gonglo. I think it's a lot of window dressing. And I think that, I think Madam Salif did something like that for Ghana in 2015 or 14. I remember we went to Ghana, they had election problems. They wanted to postpone it, and then the opposition came and called her to intervene. So she went and had them sign some similar, something like that. But, in the Liberian case, I think from the first Farmington to follow up on Gonglo, they should have started working together somehow, that interested parties would be talking about what do we need to do with the police? How do we work with the Election Commission? How do we work with the Ministry of Justice? Elections is not just one day event. It's a whole process. You have many, many days to, ahead to do it. And then you have many agencies involved in it. So those agencies need to be involved in a discussion, not just with the government. The police should never appear to be a government militia, watching the elections. The Minister of Defense, as the Minister of Defense has wrongly said that he was drawing a line. He can't draw a line because he's working for George Weah. The day George Weah fired him, he can't say, the thing. So the last time we had the defense people involved in our politics, that was 1985. We know what happened. So those kind of, slipperies and stuff. But the Minister of Justice needs to be involved. Election Commission needs to be involved. And then they take all the agencies that are part of this process and sit down and follow up, like you have weekly meetings, discussions, appointed people who go to those meetings and follow up every event, the issues you have. Then you don't have, you don't have violence. When you talk about violence, so far in the Liberian context, I think the violence that I know of, or the threat of violence, came from one part. Every issue that had raised so far, from the July 26th video of students in front of the U.S. Embassy, to Akaris Gray, to Taylor Euro, and all of those issues, it came from one party. One party was involved in everything. So that party is the one that needs to call on his political hooligans to stop. I think that's a problem. And I don't think, this will change anything. I don't think it will change people's mind. I don't think you have another Taylor guy, a senator going to, what's the place name in Cape Mount beating up a chief because people told him that, oh, Sierra Leoneans were coming to register. And then he said, the county is under me. He doesn't understand his job as a senator. Is it immigration to go beat up a chief and say, you bring your family people from Sierra Leone to register? So all these kind of things, these are hooligans. I mean, in football, they have hooligans. In politics, you have hooligans. And this declaration in this thing is not going to work. It's nothing. It's just paperwork. Political parties need to stand up. If they want power, they need to fight for it. It ain't going to be solved by a piece of paper.
Thank you. Mr. Khan, put on your policy cap here. And before you come up with something, you must do some analysis. Let's say we are trying to avoid violence here. And the root cause, if they did a root cause analysis, they're telling us that maybe the will of political leader, or their lack of will, that's what caused violence in elections. So in order to solve this problem, let's get the political leaders to sign. What does this tell you? Does it tell you a clear understanding of the issues of election violence and transparency when it comes to election if you bring political leaders together to sign?
So Dennis, this is why in my comment I mentioned that yes, this was done in 2017, but why is it still necessary today? Because if we had made progress in terms of actually stabilizing the country and making sure that our processes, whether it was election or not, broadly governance, we've strengthened our institutions, then we would not need this. The question you asked earlier, whether there were laws in place, there are certainly laws in place that guide public safety. There are laws in place, even demonstration. Before you demonstrate, there are procedures that you have to follow. So there are laws in place to guide everything. In elections, there are laws. Even when it comes to the campaign period, the Election Commission has that authority to be able to regulate the political parties, to make sure that no political party is having an event in a certain part of the county or in a certain part of the country when the other party is there. So these rules and regulations are already in place. Why are we signing this on top of everything? I mean, if you go back and analyze, stakeholders might have thought that even with those rules and regulations that are in place, they have not been strong enough. They've been violated, like Duke was saying. So perhaps they are using this as a tool, like I said, to just be able to hold these political parties to a commitment to say we're not going to do it. Because what eventually is going to happen is that when you violate, all of the citizens and civil society, everyone is going to say, you just came back from Farmington, you said you were not going to be involved in violence. Why are you involved in violence at this point in time? I agree with the point of making it a little bit broad. Not only government officials and agencies that are playing a role, but even civil society, for instance. I don't know whether civil society play a role in even affixing their signature to it, to just be able to serve as a witness that these political parties came together to be able to say that this election is going to be free and fair, it's going to be void of violence. So, I mean, maybe that's one improvement that could have been done to make it a bit more broadened. Perhaps the thought is that for the fact that the president signed, he signed on behalf of all the entire government. So whether it's the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Justice, the president signed on their behalf. So, I mean, to me, this is why I'm asking the question: do we always need to do this? Are we going to do this in 2029? If we do it in 2029, then we are not really making progress.
But Thomas, here's the thing, right? You're going to play your game. By agreeing to go to this game, I play for Black Devils. So by agreeing to go play this game, you already agreed to the rules, right? Are you going to sign a separate agreement to when the people's code go on me, I will accept it? How does this make sense?
So this is what I'm saying. The fundamental question we need to answer is, why do we need it now? And I think the situation that we have seen, the way things have played out over the past couple of months, we have said that with all of the laws that we have in place, people are violating them. So let's bring them together to commit to something. Because all these laws have been in place. We've seen people get out and just beat people, like Dr. Duke was saying. A lot of things have gone wrong. So I mean, to me, using the situation that we have at hand, perhaps somebody might have just said, but let's go back and do what we did in 2017. But the point I'm making is that if we continuously keep doing this, it means that the existing laws that we have in place to guide the election, to guide public safety, to guide citizens' right to assembly and all of that, even including the Constitution, then we are saying that these laws are not working. And therefore, we need a piece of paper for political parties to sign. And I'm saying that over the past 5 years, we have not seen that these laws have been, they are in place, but whether they have been implemented, I think there have been some weaknesses which might have necessitated this. But my conclusion is that if all of these laws that we have in place have been implemented, then of course we did not need this.
And Dr. Duke, are the political leaders here taking too much to themselves? Because you are going somewhere to sign the paper saying, I pledge there will be no this, there will be no this. Is this arrogance or ignorance on the part of these political leaders going there to say, yeah, I'm going to represent maybe 60,000 people to sign a piece of paper that we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that? I mean, how do you take that burden upon yourself? If I think, as you said earlier, election is not an event; it's a process, right? So, voters' education and all these things play a role. So you're going to skip all that and say, "I'm just going to sign a piece of paper to tell me that everything is going to be okay." Ignorance or arrogance?
Well, both, because I think when you think about it, diplomats do a lot of things. That's like creating issues and problems, and then bringing solutions, and then nobody, it doesn't resolve anything, but they get a job done. They fly, they go to hotels, and then they write a paper, people meet, and then sign something and walk on. To add to that aspect that Kanye was talking about, the adding the civil society. When you talk about sovereignty, this is where you show your leadership, that your country is able to sit people, say, okay, we have election coming in a year time. Can we open channels of communication between us and the government institution that work on this process so that we don't have any surprises? If you sign a document, if you don't sign it, you keep engaging everybody all the time. No matter how bad things are, how can we not do that? Why do we need ECOWAS or the UN, the AU to come and tell us, oh, you want to sign a paper in a hotel and near the airport, and then you go, and then they go back home and they say, okay, let's see what happens next. This is democracy. It goes from the bottom. George Weah is not a stranger. He's the president. Morba Molo is not a stranger. People know him. He's been in everybody. People know him from everywhere. Akaros Grace is not a stranger. They know each other. Why not sit down and say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are having elections in 6 months. We have delays. These are the problems. How do we resolve them? How do we work together? How do we see each other as competitors but not enemies? That's what you're talking about. You don't go sit in a hotel room drinking water and then barely talking to each other and then sign a piece of paper and say, we sign a peace agreement. It's arrogance, as you say, and it's ignorance. Arrogance in the sense that you cannot control the mob. George Weah cannot control the CDC. He talked about militancy. Who has the biggest militant group in Liberia? It's George Weah. The berets, the pants, the khakis, and all the boots. We see them every day. They chant, they dancing. He's the first one to do that. Let him dismantle that paradigm from your political organization and then move forward. So the Yekeh Koloba will not be forced to wear another beret and then create his own group. It started at the top. But these discussions need to be had at the level of this whole society, that we sit and say, we have problems. We have problems. How do we resolve them? It's not the government. It's not the civil society. And not the political parties who are just looking for power. That's my point.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo, we saw the Ganta Accord. They signed it fell apart. But my question here is, I don't know how this one is going to hold and how they're going to enforce it. Or are you just going to go back and say, oh, you signed it? But my question here is, the the Unity Party standard bearer, Mr. Joseph Boaka, gave a laundry list of violations that have never been resolved. Even has, and there were some recommendations to the Election Commission that were never done, right? So on top of that, you are signing agreements that it will have free, fair elections. Well, when they beat up this person, there's nothing done. All the things that give rise to election violence, they are happening and they have not been investigated, or the issue have not been really resolved amicably. People beat up people and there's nothing done about it. On top of that, you are signing an agreement. Who's playing who here?
Dennis, hear what I would say. Yourself, I read the Ambassador Boaka laundry list of concerns. I mean, those are things that are on record. The fast speak for itself. These things he spoke about, there are things that happen. I mean, I can say, for example, the voter registration rule. The voter rule was one of the key things that Electoral sent even delegation to Liberia to work with NEC and political parties to cleanse the voter rule. Okay, now we're moving from that voter rule to the biometric registration. So we hope that will settle the concern about the pardon of the voter rule. Okay, I hope we have a new voter rule and not having it on top of the old one. But that said, I think the sad thing is that, and I just frank on this based on what I know and I've seen, I think the international NGOs are just playing and they're just setting the stage to make money, and our political actors decide to follow it. Because it doesn't make sense to me that I will go to a conference being aware of the laundry list of the failure of government to implement those things. Then I highlight those things and say, in fact, the most recent one, the party candidate was cheated in Lofa. Then you look at it and say, you know what, I'm going to just sign it. I think they just decided that, okay, since the United Nations, Yara Carter Center, Ellen Johnson, Sally, these are Electors, they are involved, we'll just sign it. What the donor is going to do, they're taking that agreement to go to the funder and say, look, we have just got the political parties in Liberia to sign a non-violent pact that will make this process. We need to support the process. We need maybe $2 million or $5 million to move to support local groups to promote peace education, violence-free election, yada, yada. Nonsense. This is just a stage set by the international NGOs to eat money. And our political parties decided that they will help them to make money. Because traditionally, Liberia has just been a conduit of money laundering by the international NGOs. That's all they do. They bring money, pass it through there, and nothing is left in the country. And our political actors have always helped them to do so. And that's one classic example here. That Farmington agreement, all the NGOs I know, because I worked with some of them before, they will make money. Not $1 will go to any opposition party and say, we'll come here to build, to strengthen their capacity to monitor the process yourself. They're not going to do that. But they will use the agreement to raise money for themselves and for their activities from now to 2010. That's all.
Well, let's wait and see. Thomas, I want you to conclude on this. Let's look on the bright side of this agreement.
I mean, going back to the point Mr. Gonglo is making, my point always is that we have a country, but we don't run it as a sovereign country. Like Doug was saying, basic things that we need to do as a country, we don't do it. And we wait for other people to come and do it. So it's almost like the country is some kind of territory that is really run by the international community. And we can't have it two ways. If we don't want people to interfere in our sovereign issues, then we need to solve them rather than creating a problem and going back to the same international community and say, come and help us. So once we run our country as a country, this is what I'm saying. If we are implementing our laws, we are law abiding, we are following the laws that we have in place. Why should we always have to sign an agreement when elections is coming? It means our democracy is not maturing. And we always keep saying, okay, our democracy is a flashing democracy. And every time we have election, the next election, we think that elections are themselves democracy. That means our democracy is strengthening. But if we don't improve governance between these elections, then we just have these elections as events. So, like I said, I mean, in conclusion, to me, the only benefit that it comes with all of the limitations and maybe lack of inclusion is that it provides something that the citizens can be able to hold these political parties to say, okay, you went out here, you signed this agreement that you were not going to get involved in violence, but here are you using all kind of means to be able to chop people in places, go and beat up people in the name of having control over territorial areas and all of that. So I think the citizens have something to be able to hold these political leaders accountable for. So to me, that's the only bright side of it. But do we need it all of the time? If we keep having it, it means our democracy is not really growing.
And we still there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday, and we are talking about the Farmington River Agreement. Dr. Duke,
Dennis, if I can add on this.
Yeah, but also add, why Farmington River? Why not the ministerial complex that is maybe government area, right? Is it just more money?
Because it's owned by one Lebanese man who probably had just actors there, and I understand even former ruling class people have investment in the Farmington hotel establishment. I mean, I've heard the Salih family have interest in that. So hey, they took it there to make some money. So I mean, that's look. This is all about money. Nonsense. This is all about money. Not money for the political parties. Not money for the political the cadres in the political parties. It's all about the so-called big class continuing to make money.
So why the political parties fall into this?
Then that's the unfortunate thing I must say here is, it's sad that political parties, and I'm not actually surprised because as an observer, I have followed these things critically for years. I'll give you one example. In 1995, or Dr. Dume refresh my memory on this, that last agreement that was signed for the election, I think 95 or 96 in Abuja.
96 in Abuja.
Yes. When the political parties gathered in Abuja, Mr. Taylor outsmarted them. Taylor knew that if he went for the traditional election, probably might be tough, like 50 plus 1, whatever. He said, I will go for proportional representation because the rest of the country is under me. When I win, I will choose my candidate in the Monrovia where the politicians are based, and they will have difficulty. So what he did, he opposed what he thought he wanted. He said, I don't want proportional representation system. It will not happen. Because Taylor opposed it, all the Monrovia established political parties went for it. And the Taylor gave up. But that's exactly what Taylor wanted. This whole thing, I think collaborators, so we are in the system in the region, they probably are planning, there's a bigger scheme here to probably maintain we are in power.
Right.
I mean, I would say there was not fear or contradiction. Because that agreement itself, what they've done, it has actually put the onus on the political parties that they must now keep the peace.
And that's what I'm saying. Why the political leaders fall into this?
When the government cheats, then they will be telling you, go to court. Who controls the court system? It's we are. The only independent jurist that was on the Supreme Court, we have made sure he was ejected out. Okay? So see where we are. They will say, let's use the court system. Appeal from the Elections Commission goes only to the Supreme Court. Who are the people on the bench? Locally statement by the Chief Justice. This is a dressing of the devil.
Right. So Mr. Gonglo, why are the political parties falling for this then? Are they collaborating too?
Liberian political class have always been dull. They are not, look, I said to people that I've spent short time in government and I went to so many different interministerial meetings. I sat in class with some of the smartest guys at the university. In government, they were looking for consultants to do that work. I said, how can this guy look for consulting when he can do this work himself? When they get in government, they become lazy. When they get this little title, they get lazy.
Thank you.
That's all I can say.
Thank you. Dr. Do, we are moving, or you wanted to ask something?
No. I totally
Oh.
agree with him. I totally agree with. I think it's just political parties put themselves in a jam. You just tell government, keep your security in check and let it have election, period. That's all ECOWAS needed to do. Come and tell them, hey, you know what? These are the issues. Because the political parties have issues they have raised over and over. The voting register, whatever you call it, the DPR, and this, it's been going on for 3-4 years. Nobody has changed anything. And they're still going to election to the same thing. So you set a stage to be cheated, and then they set a stage to go complain, and then you have an election commission led by a woman who's, compromised. Because tomorrow Judge Ware could decide, hey, send her to court and then let her go to jail.
Thank you. And talking about election violations, we already have a problem here. There's a lady who is a registrar in district number 10. She was alleged to be doing something that is not right. Her name, Antoinette Yekeh. According to the story, she sent a text message to CDC Chairman Momba Molu, and the text message reads, "Morning, Chairman Molu. This is Antoinette. I'm one of the NEC workers at Namua Muslim Building as Registrar District number 10. That's the district of Yekeh Koluba. Please try and reach out to us so we can talk to our co-workers so that they can be flexible with the first-time voters and other people who want to register in our interest on online hour. Let us use the internet too by registering online. Women, bring all the old ladies and first-time voters to district number 10 to register. Thanks." District number 10 Representative Yekeh Koluba raised this issue and went to had a big show about this. He said this was posted in a CDC chat room where he is anonymously. And that's how he brought this up. The Election Commission heard this and they terminated the services and they wrote this release. And part of that release, they talk about, part of that, it said, meanwhile, the end of it, NEC has terminated the services of Antoinette Yekeh, one of its temporary staff who served as a registrar at the Namua English and Arabic School in District number 10 for acts inimical to her status as a BVRO staff. Ms. Yekeh was terminated following an investigation established her involvement in activities that had the propensity to undermine the integrity and credibility of the commission. Mr. Gonglo, you heard this story. Let me get your reaction.
Well, I think the release fell short of what I expected NEC to do. If the act she was engaged in was a violation of the election laws or the rules of engagement for election commission staff, that release didn't say we're turning her over to the Ministry of Justice for prosecution. At least we probably did, but I didn't read it. So she must first been turned over to police, because what she didn't just have the potential. If I don't know whether the Elections Commission got any integrity left, but I need to say it has the potential to undermine the integrity of the police of the Elections Commission. But it also has the potential to cause chaos to induce violence in the process. Because if you're doing this, and all political, Yekeh Koluba and his followers could probably go to that registration center and say, no registration will take place at this place, because this place is being used as a conduit to falsify voter registration roll. They could do that just on the account of that. And that would be bringing violence. So why did NEC fall short of taking this case to the Ministry of Justice for the police to get involved? I think the example they failed to set is to have the lady prosecuted in court. If, in fact, they believe what she did is a violation of their own rules.
Thank you. Mr. Kane, we don't know how widespread is this. We don't know if she actually succeeded in doing what she wanted to do with Mr. Molu. So we don't know because we don't know dates. Maybe she sent this a week later and Mr. Molu was able to comply. We don't know all that, and we may never know. But how does the Farmington River Agreement address this kind of issue?
Zero.
So I think I want to situate this issue into a broader context, considering where it took place, district number 10. I think since the voter registration started, district number 10 seems or is the epicenter of a lot of things happening. Yekeh has been under attack. There has been news of people being trucked into the district to get registered. You also see a lot of officials, like the youth chair of CDC. I watched a video where he went to register. He had a batch of young people behind him, and the police even had to tear gas them. So this kind of text message coming out of the district where there are already problems of, or trucking of people into the district, and a member of the election commission team sending a text message to the party chairman is really an issue here. I don't know exactly how Yekeh managed to get this. Like he said he's in a chat room that people don't know whether he's there or not. But I think this, is something that is part of a bigger problem that is going on in District 10 that needs to be addressed. The other issue is there has been some information coming out around this issue of these first-time voters. If you listen to some videos on the social media and you listen to some discussions on some talk shows, there is information that people are registering who are actually under the age. Even children who are 13, 14, 15, they are getting registered. So when you see someone saying that the registration team at the center should be flexible enough to allow these people to register, then we need a bit of investigation here. So for me, it's not only the point of the election commission training this lady over for prosecution. I would have loved for the election commission to open an investigation into this issue. Is this only limited to that voter registration center, or is this broader than that particular voter registration center? Because these are things that could lead to violence. It couldn't be the voter registration, but it could be on the day of election when people challenge, for instance, and say, I know this kid, he's 12 years old, he's 13 years old. Or even at the point of voter registration, there could be an issue there because the election laws provide that at the point of registration, somebody can challenge your eligibility for registration. Somebody can challenge that you are underage. Somebody can challenge that you are not a citizen of Liberia. And if kids who are below the age are being registered, it could be a source of violence. So on the issue of how the Farmington Agreement can address this, like I said from the beginning, it's not that the agreement is just going to solve every problem. There are existing laws in place that the Election Commission should use to be able to solve this. But the only thing that agreement can do is that if any political party or any political actor wanted to take this and just blow it out of proportion, maybe it could just serve as a tool for them to be able to be careful on how they approach this issue. And then it comes back to the point of, for instance, the broad nature of the agreement. Did independent candidates, for instance, there are people who are running for office in Liberia who might not be part of political parties. So if they're involved in violence, are we going to say because they didn't sign the agreement and therefore they are not going to be part of it? But I think the Election Commission needs to investigate this and make sure that it is not repeated across the country because it will be a problem.
And Mr. Kane, it appears that this whole election violence there and the Farmington Agreement is for election day. Because I don't think they are even paying attention to these kind of things because they are looking for election day. Who's going to say no? We don't accept the result and we're taking up arms or we're going to throw stones. I don't think they are mindful of all these things that happened prior to October 10. If not, they're going to flag this one.
No, back back to the original document in 2017, it was not only for election day, it's for the electoral process. This is why you see it's signed a bit earlier. So it's just going to make sure that people who are involved in this in the electoral process are not themselves a source of violence. It's not only for that day. So
Right.
any issue that aligns to any issue, even with the issue of campaign can be a source of violence, right?
Right.
Voter registration can be a source of violence.
So
Even
what
the
will be the
issue,
process to address this issue prior to October 10? Because I'm using this as a case study.
so this is where I haven't read the current agreement, but it must be linked to existing conflict resolution mechanisms. I don't know what was put in there, that if there is actually something that happens that is triggering violence, how do you then resolve it? So that's something I can't answer off here. But I think the Election Commission already has procedures in place to be able to address these issues.
Thank you. And up to the time of the show, I've been trying very hard to get a copy of this agreement. I couldn't.
And that's one problem with our country. Many of the public documents are in file cabinet, so you can't really see it. So if this was signed, for instance, you want citizens to know what is in there, by this time it should be on the Elections Commission website for us to be able to access it.
I mean, how long will it take you to scan it and put it on Dr. Duke, let me get your reaction to what is happening in district number 10.
Well, I think he put it right. I mean, how extensive is this problem? Was she part of an organization that put her there? How many people she put through so far? So we don't know that. I mean, it seems like they're just brushing it aside and say, oh, yeah, this is a minor incident. But maybe it's not. You have to look at the whole process. But, then again, it comes down to the election commissions. How much can they really do? And the opposition parties should be able to investigate and say, no, we want to know where this lady came from, who put her in that position, and how many other people were part of this process. And then you go to the bottom of it. But you don't just fire one person and say, oh, we fire her. So what? It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve any problem. I think they need to investigate. Opposition needs to stand up to it and say, no, we want to know who else was involved, how far this goes, and how long it's been going on, and how many people went through this process. And they should have people at the registration center. If you see somebody who is 14, say, no, you, where are you, who are you? How you just erase the issue. This is not, Yekeh can be, all over the country. You have to have people. That's why the election costs so much money, because you have to follow these processes from the beginning. You have to have people standing there and then watching the registration process and say, hey, you're not qualified for this or that reason. Yes, there may be some stupid issues, but then you get your point across. But I don't think this is the solution so far. I think they're covering it up, they're pushing under the map and say, let's move on. But I don't think the politicians should let it move on. They should go and investigate. Was that woman part of a gang? Was she part of a militia, a political militia? Was she assigned to her? What was her assignment? Who gave her an assignment? What's her contact level with the chairman of the party? If she's doing that at the chairman, sending a text message to the chairman, who knows who else is doing it? We know about her. What about the other people? So how expensive is this?
Yes. Mr. Gonglo, how do we move forward, right? Because she sent text message, others may be calling, others may be walking to the chairman house, and maybe other political parties may be doing the same thing, right? This is Yekeh district, only Yekeh, and we know how he's been. He's able to, he said he's in many CDC chat room anonymously. So maybe Councillor Gonglo may not be in the other chat room. So how will we ever know? And how do we move forward with this? How especially with the Farmington agreement. So what do we do now?
I think this is why I'm actually disappointed in the way the Elections Commission addressed the issue. Because one thing happened, like other panelists have said, one thing happened. It is, you know, the depth of that issue when you investigate. If you were to call this lady, turn this lady over to the Ministry of Justice, and I mean, I'm not assuming or admitting that the Ministry of Justice will conduct a thorough investigation, because I also don't trust them. But at least they are the institution of government that are responsible for such a thing. Okay? So if they were to turn this woman over to the Ministry of Justice to do investigation, at least they will be under the obligation to come up with some findings to say, well, this is what a woman said. Or probably she might be intimidated at some point to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to bear this alone. We are many that were recruited to work for NET. I will say what others are doing. I will let the cat out of the bag. Who knows? She probably could go that route. I am under the belief that she was not a lone wolf. She was not acting alone. I believe this is a syndicate. This is a syndicate, because we know the composition of the Elections Commission. We know how they got there. We know even how they have been acting in the by-elections. Let us not forget the 2020 elections. Let us not forget how many days and how they were a little bit slow in announcing most around the election result, because it was overwhelming. The defeat of the CDC was overwhelming in Maserati. But there were attempts to delay that result. Let us not forget what happened in Lofa. Let us not forget what happened even in Nimba, that ended in the court, at the Supreme Court. Okay? So the Elections Commission has got a lot to do here. The fact that they decided not to investigate this woman, turn the woman over to the Minister of Justice for investigation and probably onward prosecution, for me, it tells me that the Elections Commission has a part to play in this scam. It's just that the woman was caught and through Yekeh network, and that's why I exposed them. We don't even know whether how many person, like Karen said earlier, Registrar under that scheme. We don't know.
So, Dr. Du, how do we move forward?
Investigate. Send a lady to Justice Ministry. Let everybody do what they're supposed to do. Investigate. Find out how she got her job, who gave her instructions, and how many people are involved, and so forth and so forth. Because that's, it could be the whole process. It could be a syndicate everywhere throughout the country. So you don't know. So she's not alone. I mean, she can't just be sitting and say, send our people. Those are like very technical things. Say, send our people so they can register first-time voters. She's addressing, people. So she's categorizing the people she wants to attract. So it sounds like she's doing something on command, not just haphazardly.
But Dennis, if I may even add to this quickly, before you come, I'm sorry. Let me, so I can lose my thought on this. In fact, the Farmington Agreement, to bring meaning to the Farmington Agreement, I think this is one case that the Farmington Agreement could even say, in such violation of the process, any further investigation, political parties must be represented. So that woman, up to have been turned over to the Minister of Justice, and the investigation, political parties, lawyers should be present to observe the process. What kind of question the CID is asking her, and what response she is giving publicly to bring meaning and confidence that yes, our lawyers were our agents were present, and they listened to it. We agree with the findings of the investigation. She was acting alone, or this was a syndicate. This is one area that the Elections Commission could try to redeem some of our tainted and lost character in this process.
Thank you. Mr. Kana, you are smiling. How do we move forward? You say investigation. Who's going to call for it now? This is, we're gone, right? We signed the Farmington Agreement. We're only waiting for October 10, maybe. So how do we move forward with this issue that has been unearthed?
The point I wanted to make quickly is that there's a portion of that text message that says that I think an intervention should be done so that the other team members could be flexible, right?
Yeah.
so that they can be flexible with the first-time voters. So my point here is that if she was asking for an intervention to be done for the whole team to be flexible, is this the first time? Have they been flexible and they changed? And therefore, she needed an intervention to be done for them to be more flexible. So, like Mr. Gongro was saying, the investigation is necessary in the sense that you need to establish whether this was done independently or it was done in collaboration with other people. And like we've all said, when you investigate this case, then you get to understand what was happening at that voter registration center, what is happening across that district and even beyond the district. How we move forward from here, like we have made a point, I don't think it's enough for the Election Commission to just fire her and she moves away. If she was working with other people, they would just pick up from there. I think the Election Commission itself needs to do some administrative investigation. Maybe based on their findings, then they can turn her over to the Ministry of Justice. I think I saw somewhere today where a court, I think, sent some people to prison for registering twice. I think they had gone to a voter registration center to register, and then they went back to the very registration center to register. It came up, and eventually they were prosecuted for it. So I think this lady, in addition to being fired, the Election Commission needs to do some administrative investigation for the credibility of the election, right? And just coming from Farmington, that is putting a lot of responsibility on the Election Commission to make sure that they also can make sure that this election is not only free and fair and transparent and credible, but it should be seen. People should see it as free, fair, and transparent. And if such thing happens, I think this is an opportunity for the Election Commission to be able to rise above the fray and be able to demonstrate right here that we do not condone this. We're going to make sure it is not repeated, and we give that confidence to all the citizens in Liberia that the voter registration process is going to be free of any intervention. No political manipulation will take place. So I think the Election Commission needs to do some work here and then use the government in terms of their interagency coordination to see if there can be further actions that need to be taken.
And see how confident are the signers.
Yeah, you can sign anything. I mean, I don't care what kind of pen you use to sign it. It's just paper. It doesn't respond to realities. It doesn't correspond, doesn't solve the problems you have.
Before we go to our next topic, I just want to remind you today, it's been 27 years since we had what is known in Liberia today as the butt naked war.
April 6 fracas.
April 6, 1996 to April 6, 2023, 27 years.
Yeah, I posted something on it.
Yeah, where were you? Thomas, I don't know if you should get involved in this.
I was at the embassy at the time. I was at the embassy in DC. And I remember after that, things fell apart. ECOWAS came in. And then we went to Abuja to send out Abuja Accord like stay. And I remember it was, nobody was talking to anybody. The warring factions were not talking to each other. Sakala was completely out of the process. So we were sitting one night at a bar, Samuka and myself and other people. Ambassador Yuroha, who was ambassador of Nigeria to Liberia at the time, came to us. He said, hey, you two come here. Samuka and myself said, I need you two guys. I said, why? He said, you have been to all these peace meetings. You have signed all the accords. You've seen all the accords. I need a paper. I need something on paper between now and tomorrow morning. Because the president don't let me. He's going to arrest these people if nothing happened by tomorrow noon. I said, you get it? He said, no. He took us down in the basement. It was like 7:00 p.m. He said, what do you need? What kind of drink you need? He emptied the hotel room, the hotel basement. And the two of us, Samka and I, sat there and wrote a 3-page peace agreement that he came and collected at 6:00. He took it to Abacha and said, this is what Liberian people came up with. And after Abacha looked at it, he brought it to the warring factions. He said, this is what ECOWAS wants you to do. It was written by Samuka and myself. He's still alive. The Mamadou Salif, all of these people are still there. It was the two of us who wrote that accord. It took us like 10 hours, 6:00. And then afternoon, everybody, well, yeah, we got a peace accord. Let's go sign it. He said, Doc, you come here. I said, no, I'm sleepy. I'm going to go back to bed. That was, yeah, the peace accord. It was Samuel and myself who wrote that Abuja Accord, the two of us in a hotel room.
Wow. I have just returned from Zerikore in Guinea, where I was teaching 95. So because things were okay now, we're returning to go to school. It's one LU business. And so I got in Monrovia, started school, and then 96, boom. There's Roosevelt Johnson War where Charles Taylor said he was going to arrest them because they were blocking Camp Johnson Road, so he needed to arrest them. And there were people.
What his name? One of what's his name? One of the warlords. I mean, he was not really. He was part of Ulimo, but he has broken away from Alaji, so he was with.
Ulimo J.
Yeah, they say he killed someone, and they wanted to arrest him.
Yeah.
Alaji Kruma and Taylor got together and said, they will go the peacemakers in Monrovia.
Right, and that's why they used to call the two the combined forces.
Yeah, the combined forces.
Right. So that's it. Today is the 27th anniversary of that nonsense call. And so at night, I was trying to get my way with my siblings to get our way out, and we're on the ship that was so on seawater, the Zolotisa.
You and Tom were you?
No, other people were on bug challenge, but by the time they left, we got down to take the road to Locatur. That too is another story. But ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. We are discussing, the last one I want us to discuss here is the way government officials play active role in campaign rallies. What really does that mean? What does it say? Is there any regulation against that? Is it in the code of conduct? Is it in our election law? Is it in some ethics law? Something? Or what really happens if someone who is high up there in politics, who is maybe a minister, assistant minister, deputy minister, city mayor, if they are this active, how do they really relate to their co-workers or their subordinates who are not from their political parties? Let me play you a clip here where the assistant minister of agriculture was at one of these rallies, including the city mayor of Monrovia. Why? Well, you saw the assistant agriculture minister, and you also saw the city mayor. So I don't know. I will start with Dr. Duke on this one, on what really the law say. But I was looking at Philadelphia, and they have political activity rule, Philadelphia City, they say all city officers or employees you may vote in election, you may register as a member, campaign against legislative or issues, donate to candidate. You can do all these things. What? But here are the things that are prohibited. To engage in political activity while on duty, while in uniform, using city title or status, using city resources in city office space. You can raise funds for a political purpose, run for office while holding a city position, take on management role in the campaign party or partisan group, take on management role in the campaign party or partisan group, volunteer for any candidate or campaign and all that. That's Philadelphia. That's United States. Dr. Duke, is there anything there in Liberia?
Yeah, you got to think about where this habit came from. The one-party state system, where government was the party was the government. That culture been part of our politics for a long time. And I remember in 2017, Madame Sirleaf made the same mistake. She set up a campaign committee that had a lot of ministers and civil servants in it. And it was only when the thing was published, I remember I was in the States and I talked to Nagweslo at the time. He was in town. He said, no, the old man made a mistake. And then there was a few calls made. And then she went back and said, okay, these are, they're not part of the campaign team. Some of them will serve as advisors, because she noticed that it was, was going against the code of conduct, because these are public servants using public resources. They're getting paid by the government, by the public, so they cannot belong to one political party at any time. As long as you're part of the government, the civil service, or the government, as I say, you cannot be participating in political rallies. I mean, it was clear. I think I don't know where we have it, but it is there. And she had to make the change, and she had to withdraw those names and then create a new list. But again, even in the new list, people from the government run the campaign. So it was, people run the campaign from the government. She said, and I don't know, I don't know if there's a specific way to put it, but definitely she thought there was a problem with it, because she withdrew that first list of people that she had put on the campaign team, and then went and nominated a new team composed of non-government people, but in the background, government people run the campaign.
Mr. Gonglo, let's talk to this. Let's look at the code of conduct. You are muted. Is there anything there?
The code of conduct is actually clear. If you go to the Zegna Marshal website, it's very unambiguous about that. All presidential appointees cannot engage in political activities, cannot canvass, like they do say. They can't be part of a campaign team. They can engage in political activities. All those appointed by the president of Liberia, the office of the president, cannot engage in any political activities. The code of, I think in section 2 also, say if someone appointed by the president wants to engage in political activities, maybe seek elected office, they shall resign 2 years prior to the elections. That's what it says. I know the Supreme Court has some opinion on this because it was challenged.
It was amended to 1 year. It was amended to 1 year.
Yeah. But I think it is the only one that was challenged was that 2 years criteria. But in terms of not engaging in political activities, that was not challenged. So it's still there. It is only prior to the 2 years prior to the election, what was challenged. Okay. And the Supreme Court gave a moving kind of interpretation to it. We know it was very political at the time because this was an attempt to probably disqualify some major candidates, So the Supreme Court said, well, if you have resigned, that's fine, and they gave some kind of interpretation to it, which I thought was very political. But the act is clear, Dennis. So what the Assistant Minister of Agriculture is doing there, standing there sinking, Shanton Badukra, Jefferson Koji was appointed by the president. Those are all violations of the code of conduct. Okay? Even President they didn't cover the president and say all those who were appointed by the president. But I think there's someone that say officials of government also. So it kind of a little bit, because the president is an official of government, So, but they are just dropping in our chat room. You can look at it. Particularly, you can even bring chapter 5.1. It's clear.
Mr. Kane, what do we do about this kind of thing?
I think, like Doug said, there's a thin line between these government officials and a thin line between the ruling party and the government. And sometimes they even get mixed. At a certain time, you will see a party chairman exert authority to the extent where he actually wants to be in charge because he believes he's the chairman of the party and the party is in power. So like he said, I think from the one-party state is where this problem has come from. And I think this is a problem that we are trying to solve gradually. We need to double check the code of conduct. I'm not very sure the code of conduct provides for government officials participating in these kind of activities. I think it's for those who intend to run for elected offices. Any member of the executive branch of government that intends to run for an elected political office has to resign. Initially, it was 2 years, and then the code of conduct was revised quite recently. It has been reduced to 1 year. And I think what happened in between there was that by the time it got signed by the president, I think it was already within the 1 year. So the president had to issue an executive order asking folks to resign. So I think some folks, the Inspector General of Commerce, I think has resigned. I was listening to news. The Deputy Director, I think, to GSA has resigned. So those who intend to run are resigning. So if the act does not provide for those who are still in office, there's of course regulations on how you can use government properties. Because we see, for instance, not only political rallies, but the way government properties, vehicles are used in Liberia. Somebody is building their private house, they carry it to the beach and put sand in it and carry it to their project site. These people should not be using government vehicles that way. You should not also be using the time. And to me, this is something, I mean, we need to work on further, because let's say, for instance, when the president is coming from out of the country, you see all the government officials go and line up. When they should be at the Ministry of Agriculture, they should be at the Ministry of Transport to go and welcome the president, they shake the president's hand, and then they come back. So that time that the Liberian people is paying for, that you should be in your office for which you are appointed, you leave it and go out there to do political campaign and political rallies. And this is where, when we come to election year, the government practically becomes paralyzed. Nothing happens in the election year because the entire government is campaigning. Sooner or later, if you send anything to the ministry, the point will be that the minister is in Lofa, the minister is in Grange, and they are all across the country, they are campaigning. So if the code of conduct does not cover this, I mean, it took a lot of time for us to even agree to pass it. So I think this is the additional step that we need to move on to. Whether you are running for elected office or not, what should be your responsibility to the office to which you were appointed, as opposed to what your party mandate is.
Thank you. And the clip I played,
Yeah,
this
but
was
then
a program. Yeah, 1 second. This was a program where they say megaphone announcers for WIA. So I think the former guy from NHA, Sion, he started his own group, bought megaphone for these guys so that they can announce for WIA. So it was purely a political event. And so the code of conduct that Mr. Gonglo referenced, Section 5.1 says all officials appointed by the President of the Republic of Liberia shall not, A, engage in political activities, canvass or contest for elected offices, use government facilities, equipment, or resources in support of partisan or political activities, serve on a campaign team of any political party, or the campaign of any independent candidate. That's the law. So again, I go back to Farmington Agreement, right? These laws are already there. They've been violated left and right. And what is Farmington going to address, or what is Farmington going to do differently? Mr. Gonglo. On mute, please.
Yes. Because I think Farmington was just window dressing, like we all agree earlier. It was not. Farmington was just meant to set the stage for NGOs to raise money for Liberia. That's all, for their organization activities in Liberia. Basically, that's why it was not. Farmington intent is not really to have a violent-free election. No, it's just to give some people a justification why they must be in Liberia from now to December. I mean, that's basically what they wanted to do. They have to find some reason, okay? And it's very sad. It's very sad. But here the point I wanted to make. You see, like Mr. Cannon was talking about, the General Services Agency, GSA, they manage government assets, right? So the short term of paying government, you get in government, they say, oh, Minister, this car is for you. The ministry just procured this car. The procurement office can say, yeah, it's your key. This will be your driver. They don't give you the rules or engagement. I actually took time when I was at the Ministry of Labor, I went to GSA. I said, are there regulations on how you can use public assets? They said, yeah, we do have. I said, but why when they're giving, why you don't make sure each minister issue out, or even GSA itself should go to each minister and each ministry when they're procuring new vehicles, they say, hey, here is a regulation. This car, you can't use it to bring your personal charcoal home. You can't use it for this one. You can't use it for that one, right? You can do it. I remember there was a case at the Ministry of Labor. We have a generator, all ministries use generator. We have generator technician. And at the time, Councillor Gongo has been transferred there, as minister. He has been appointed as minister there. So he had a small target generator at the house, and it broke down. So he had some work to do at home. He couldn't do it. So the deputy minister then said, you know what? In the morning, he said, the minister didn't do it. He asked the ministry technician, the generator technician, to go to the minister's house to fix the generator. And he said, no, you can't do that, because he's not working for me at my house. It's my responsibility to fix my generator. The ministry staff cannot go there because he's not been paid to fix my generator. I will find different technician. But this is something where that's a tradition. There's a thin demarcation between technical staff at the ministry and what they do for the minister outside the ministry. You see the driver go to the minister's house on Saturday, he's not paid. He's just like any government official, any government employee, like the minister who got Saturday and Sunday off. But the driver will go to the minister's house in the morning. Yeah, minister, what are we here to do? It's a court because we don't educate our employees on what our responsibilities are. I mean, in my case, I try to do that. Also, and people will think that you're selfish, that's why you're doing it. I will tell my driver, you only drive for me when I'm at the ministry. When it's 4 o'clock, get on the bus and go home. I will drop myself home because I know how to drive. After 4, you have no obligation to me. I must drive myself. When my car breaks down, I must find a way to handle it. I shouldn't be calling the driver to wake him up. But it's like a tradition. Kind of raise an issue, but this, there's a collective systemic failures at all levels in government, in public service. This is system failure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday, and we have addressed 3 major issues here: the Farmington River Declaration 2023, the elections registrar whose services were terminated by the NEC for acts inimical to the conduct of elections, and we have the participation or taking top level role in campaign rallies by government officials. If you want to be a part of the conversation, please call 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. The broader topic today is towards elections 2023. We're going towards election. We are having these issues. Dr. Duke, really, are these issues being raised, or they've been raised and they've been ignored by the people in power? Or we just focus and fixated on October 10 and kind of side brushing some of these issues? What's your feeling?
My feeling is that nobody really cares about the details. It's like people see, oh, we're going to do elections, we're going to win, and they don't see that little small problems are piling up to become big one day. You let one small problem go, you let a second one go. At the end, you find yourself in a situation where you can no longer control the pace of change, things that are happening. And the one big one would happen. You say, yes, you forgot all those little ones. And I think that's what the problem is with the opposition. They don't seem to take issue with problems as they come. They don't resolve them. They don't force a resolution. And you can't do that. I mean, when CDC was in the opposition, they were never silent about those things. They make sure that you heard their voices. They went to the parliament. They went in the streets. They did everything possible to make sure that people listen to them. And but now the opposition seem to be like, okay, we go along. It's like backroom diplomacy, not a campaign mode. Not like people who really fighting to be president, or people who just say, okay, we're going to take this easy, as if there's this fear that if you do something so bad will happen, and then you're going to break down Liberia. So if you don't take these issues, what happened at the neck, what happened with the police, what happened at LU, you don't take them seriously, then you're setting yourself for failure. That's definitely my prediction, that if you don't take little problems seriously, they're going to pile up, and then boom, when they blow in your face, you disfigure. You don't see a damn thing. You don't get anything done. What are you going to do? You go to you say October 26th, the results come up. You go to ECOWAS, oh, they cheated. They say, okay, you have proof? Well, did you have people in every voting pool? No, we didn't. But they cheated us. They multiplied the voting. But all these things can be controlled. You have to, the U.S. 200 years of democracy is still fighting with democracy. They're still going through the same problems. Voter registration, this and that. I try to change the system every day. We are new into the game, but we can also do it. This is not the first elections in Liberia, but it can be done. But everybody has to play a role. The police has to play its role. NEC has to be above the game, although they have so much power. I think they have too much power in the first place. The Supreme Court has to be non-partisan, and the Ministry of Justice have to follow this case. You don't have to, if somebody say we fire somebody because the person was doing something bad in registering people, the Ministry of Justice should jump on it and say, we want to investigate. You don't wait for somebody to come and complain to you. So I don't think our politicians are really fighting the way they should. They're too laid back.
Mr. Kana, you work in Liberia, something I didn't have the opportunity to do. So maybe I'm the only one here who has not worked in the country. So, but how does it look when it comes to these people that are the way the mayor was singing, and the language that they use? I like how Mr. Kony would say bellicose language, the vitriol and all this. How do they really relate to people from the other parties on the job? I was talking to someone who works in government and said, oh, I mean, this government, these are just a political talk, but it's not really reflected in the offices. Here, the government has a lot of people from other political parties, like Cecilia Coffee Brown, like Mary Brown, and they started naming names. These are not seditions, and they are working. These are just political talk. What's your experience with this political talk?
Well, in terms of the way people relate, what you normally see in Liberia is when you see all of these government agencies, when a political party wins, the top of it represents the political party that is in power. And then below the decision makers, where you have the civil servants, that is where you have a mix of people in some instances. Where you have civil servants, of course, they might have their political parties, but they are not mainstream like those who are at the top. So in terms of your relationship with them, this is where it becomes very, very difficult. And I think one thing we have seen in this current government is that, this whole issue of our time and our time. And so when you become too extreme in it, it affects your relationship with other people. And in some instances, it will even affect the work that you do, because in the end, the civil service is supposed to be apolitical, because they are there. Every government comes and go, but these people are there. And so if you want to become so political, even in the office, and you want to make them to follow your party position and all of that, and there's a resistance, then it will create a problem between you and those people that you are working with in the ministries. And I think what we have seen over the past couple of years is people even being transferred. We have seen some people say, okay, you can no longer work here, you have to move to the other place. All of that helps to reduce the productivity of our public sector, because we need to make sure that when elections are over, national development should be a priority for everyone. We all work together as a unit to be able to move forward, regardless of the political parties that we have. During election, everybody goes and votes for the political party you want to vote for. But if people become overly politicized, then it has a way to be able to affect the institution that you work in, your relationship with your co-workers, and also the productivity of the institutions that you head.
Thank you. Let me take some calls here. We already have one caller on the line to join the conversation. The first caller is Elvis Morris. Elvis, you are live. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Jai, and hello to your panelists. One of the things I really want to touch on is this whole Farmington, agreement. I think it's just a formality, and I want people to realize and just remember back the election in Lofa, not Lofa, but Nimba, during the time of Ty Womboy and Mr. Gonglo, I think Big Sister, Madam Peter Gonglo Webb. There wasn't, the CDC that was in that election when violence broke out. So the violence is not only, on the side of the looting CDC. So I think people need to understand that and understand that opposition also has a propensity for violence when things don't go their way. So I think what they should have done, or what the legislatures should do now, is to pass a law and make a harsh punishment. For example, give somebody a year. Anyone who engage in election violence, a year in jail, and then publicize it so that people can know and get the awareness that anybody who is engaged in electoral violence will get at least a year in jail. That's something that will be punitive, and people will, that could be something that will deter people from engaging in it. But just signing a accord without any teeth, it will be useless. And then lastly, I just want to give my topic of the week. My topic of the week is Henry Costa backtracking on what he said about Jeremiah Count, saying, I will call him Count, saying, you don't want to teach me how to say the real name. Backtracking on what he said about Count being a human parts trafficker and all those nonsense, and talking about he's a dead horse. I think it's a complete tabata, and people should press him more on that, not just let it slide. But thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Thank you. When you said Count, I was shocked. I was like, how did you know that? Thank you. You're a good student. Let me bring on Dr. Batam Kula. Dr. Kula, you're live.
Yeah, I think one of your panelists said, what's the significance of the Farmington Declaration? Well, the Farmington Declaration is very significant in that you're getting all the major players on record as to accepting the results of the election. It's done all over the world. It's done in America when at the debates they ask Donald Trump, will you accept the results? They ask Biden, will you accept the results? Once they say yes, that kind of gets them on the record and ignores the temperature. And then the next stage is what they do traditionally here in America, where you have a call to concede. That's another way of reducing the tension and preventing post-electoral violence and all of that. So I think we should follow suit and keep up the good work of making sure that these elections do not go to violence, and that we remove the current government in the right way. Thank you.
But Dr. Kula, you said Biden and Trump, did they sign any agreement, or Biden and not Trump?
No,
Trump?
They didn't sign agreement like they're doing here in Africa. Look, Africa is a whole different ballgame.
That's what you always say.
People are hard-headed. Our people.
The people here are more hard-headed, Dr. Kula.
Yeah, but our country, we have systems that don't work. We write speeches that mean little or nothing. Our words are not our bond. So now you get somebody's signature on paper. You have a document to say, hey, here, you sign a contract. Whereas here in America, most of the time when these people give you their word, it's their bond. That's the difference.
Thank you.
That's the difference.
Thank you. Thank you. And they also signed the Ganta Accord, and nobody cared. But two comments here quickly. Sam Wallace said, is there really a difference between everyday violence and electoral violence that will require a new law? I like that, right? Every day we hear of things going on. Thomas, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's the point I was making earlier. I mean, sometimes in Liberia, we always jump to the solution being the law, but we have so many laws we don't implement them. There are laws on public order. There are laws on how people should behave. We should use those laws to be able to prosecute people who get involved in issues related to violence. I think the specific thing about election is that I want to bring in another dimension to it, is this issue of women and gender. I think we've seen some cases where women have been suppressed in election and in all of that, and women need to play a role. They need a space to be able to play a role. So there are some differences between electoral violence as compared to other forms of violence. But in the overall, we should have our existing laws to be able to solve this. Like Dr. Kula was saying, to me, the only value of this agreement is to hold these stakeholders accountable, to say you just signed a piece of document that you were not going to get involved in violence. And the point I want to make here is that it will take only one incident to be able to tear apart that whole document and make it useless. So tomorrow, if we have one political party jump out there and do something outside that agreement, then they have made the agreement useless. But until that happens, I think on the side of the citizens, at least they have something to hold them accountable. But I don't think we need a specific law for every incident or every problem when we already have laws to be able to address them.
Thank you.
Yeah, but Dennis, if I may add to what Dr. Kula said, I mean, not to add, to probably just elucidate on some of the points you tried to raise. The thing is, we all know in Liberia, there are laws like Dr. Du and Kanan, everybody has said that. What I do know in other, I know that it was done in 2017 by Martin Salif and what have you. But for example, in Kenya, what I saw in Kenya was civil society organizations came up with a, like, what I would say, resolution. That this is what they want. They took that resolution, they called political leaders. They do not have the institution of government. They don't have authority. The only thing they have are civil society organizations to promote democracy, to promote justice, to promote the respect for human rights, rule of law. So they drew this thing and said, look, we want political parties to commit themselves that this is what they will do throughout this process. Second, if any of the political parties get elected, these are things they must do in order to promote democracy or to keep the democratic process unhindered. Okay? But sitting in a room with ruling party that has command over institution of government, sitting in the room with President Weah and saying, yeah, we agree not to do so. In the meantime, the result for the district 10, I mean, district Y, is that
10.
No, 15.
15. That electoral violence, Mrs. Toba, is yet to come out. Okay? That was a violence that the government investigated. Where is the result? Okay? No. Then there are triggers for violence. We all know there are triggers. How does a Farmington agreement address those triggers? It's not enough to just call, political actors in the room and say, hey, come and make this declaration. But what are the underlying factors that promote violence in the process? How are they going to address it? Are they going to address it with the involvement of the very political leaders? It's not addressing the agreement.
Thank you. This one from Yekeh Gigan Bowman. He's a member of the ANC. See, according to Mr. Goodrich of the Rainbow Coalition, Judge Weah threatened him immediately after the signing of the Farmington agreement. I didn't read about this. Maybe Mr. Bowman can give more. Any of you know about this?
That's a hearsay.
He has not entered the press yet, so it's probably a conversation.
Hearsay conversation anyway.
Yeah.
But, it's all about sovereignty. Sovereignty come to a, you have people, you say, okay, Liberia belongs to you. You elect your government, and that government is supposed to work for you. But you don't turn yourself into a subject to the government. But that's the problem, is the mentality, that culture of bossman, my bossman. So you follow the boss everywhere. One of my friend told me the other day, she said, Liberia got his own, trilogy. So you got the bossman, you got Jesus, and you got America. And in between, the Liberian men don't take no responsibility. You're not part. Everything you pass it to one of them. Either the bossman solve it, or the Jesus, or the American. But we don't. It's all about how can you sit down as a people and say, this is our country. These are our laws. We put them on the book, and we are all equal. Let's sit and talk about the issues that we're confronting as a nation. You don't need to go to ECOWAS. You don't need to go. ECOWAS will come one day and then sign a paper and go back. You do the same thing. If it's your problem. If you don't learn to solve your problem, nobody's going to solve it. And that's the whole electoral system process is about that. How do you take control of your country? How do you know how many people live in Liberia? How do you demarcate? How do you do these things? How do you simply say, okay, let's sit down. What is the role of the police? Who is monitoring the police? What is the role of NEC? Who is monitoring NEC? Locally, don't go anywhere. Don't go to the embassy. Don't go to ECHO. Just sit among yourself and say, among ourselves as people. So we take control of this process and make it a national issue, not a foreign country issue.
Thank you. Let me read this last comment, and then we go to the Tabata of the week. Tabata in Liberia, in the Kru speaking language, means foolishness, nonsense. So what's your Tabata of the week? Before that, let's read this comment from Lucas. All what VP Bwaka outlined as per the previous electoral violence under this CDC government was never conducted judiciously. What's the guarantee that it won't happen again? The Farmington signing ceremony was all Tabata. And VP Bwaka still signed it. And the same thing happened in Lofa, right? After the election, they came out with a list of grievances and said, in spite of all this, we okay. So I don't know why VP Bwaka keep listening to this thing and keep talking and not doing anything about it. But again, I don't want to say anything because that's the
we heard you. You just said it.
But so what's your Tabata of the week? Before we go to that, let me let you know that tomorrow we have, of course, every Friday we have the literary hour with Prof. Nambwe and Jackie Sayer. Yeah, so every Friday we have the literary hour. You don't want to miss that. That's all about literature. Also, every Tuesday, we have Abby Tyler Healthy Living. Talk about your health. This Friday, that will be this Saturday, we're going to have the Liberia History Channel. Every Saturday at 7 p.m. we have the Liberia History Channel. This Saturday, we're going to continue our Presidents of Liberia series, and we're going to be discussing Charles D.B. King. When they say Charlie King time, what does that mean? You're going to hear all about Charles D.B. King. You don't want to miss that. Then on Sunday at 1 p.m., we have the Noonday presented by Priscilla J. Nyanto. The topic this week will be the 6 genders revealed in the Jewish Talmud and biology. Professor, the author and former pastor and co-author is Keith Gals. He's going to be the guest. He said there are 6 genders that are revealed in the Jewish Holy Book and also in biology. You don't want to miss that. Then, Saturday at 3, we're going to have the Business and Economic Forum. That's FOL Marketplace. The CBL says all delinquent borrowers of commercial banks, they are going to face consequences. also, Liberia is asking the African Development Bank, Liberia through the Minister of Finance is asking the African Development Bank to save Liberia's rubber sector. We need 10 million. Help us out, by. We're going to be discussing all these on FOL Marketplace. Then on Sunday is Hello Pastor. We're going to be addressing some vexing questions on this show called Hello Pastor. Will only 144,000 go to heaven? What exactly did Adam and Eve eat? Some people say that was not a fruit. How can people eat fruit and then they realize they are naked as something else? Pastor Chandler Fremont is going to address that. Is the black race curse? Sometimes they say Esau and Jacob. Jacob I love, Esau I hate. So Esau represents the black race. Sometimes they take it to Noah's children and all that. And Jesus also met a woman at the well, the Samaritan woman. The disciples met Jesus and the woman standing, and it looked like some people were thinking that Jesus was flirting with the woman or vice. So did Jesus actually flirt with the Samaritan woman at the well? Pastor Fremont will answer that question. Come, and you will learn all that.
Dennis, where is the 144,000 from?
No, that was when the population was 300,000 people.
Now you're making me scared now.
The Jehovah Witness have that, and some believe it that only 144,000 will go to heaven. The rest will remain down here because the Bible said, "Thy kingdom come," so heaven will come down. So the 144,000 represents some sins that will be there, but the rest of the people will be here because heaven will be here on earth. So Pastor Fremont will break that down.
If you need a seat, let me know.
All right. Let's go to our Tabata of the week, and I don't know if you want me to start, but let's Mr. Gonglo start. Mr. Gonglo, what's your Tabata of the week?
My Tabata of the week would be the five political parties who go to Farmington River to sit with President George. We are in the room and agree that they are going to have a violent-free elections, when in fact President Weah, the government under President Weah, has failed to make public the report of the investigation conducted in District 15 and all previous election violence. So for me to say towards or toward 10, we support a violent-free process. But you are doing that commitment with a man who has supported all the violence, who has sanctioned it, who allowed Akara's Gray to walk past the National Police Station, to go on radio, to get on the social media and announce 4 days in advance that I'm going to go to the University of Liberia to have lunch. And he has never announced the previous lunches he had at the university. He never announced it. For this one, he announced it. And it was known to President Weah it was meant to introduce violence in an election year, intended to intimidate the most conscious element of our society. Yet, the opposition party are sitting in the same room with that man to say, let's commit to a violent field. For me, it does not make sense. And if I were a crewman, I would say this is a complete tabata. St. Georgia is a crewman. They are engaged in a tabata with Georgia.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, what's your tabata of the week?
My tabata, of course, has to be the Farmington Declaration signing. And Georgia, we are calling on to end militancy. The man who has an army of militants wearing red, black berets every day and threatening people in the streets. And that man comes up and say, oh yeah, we're going to stop. He's the first one. I mean, yeah, that's a tabata.
Thank you. Mr. Kane.
Thank you, Dennis. Not a tabata, but something interesting. You know, when elections is coming,
Cool.
every citizen becomes important because it's one man, one vote. So I don't know if you all saw this video of the head of they say the Short People Association in Banga
Yeah.
that came out and said that since the vice president became vice president, they've been calling on her. She has thrown them away. She has no time for them. And I think literally 1 or 2 days after that, I saw a picture of the vice president sitting with them around her. I think they are 4, 5, or 6 or 7. So to me, it was just important how when elections is coming, every citizen is taken seriously. You don't overlook anybody because it's one man, one vote.
So that can be your tabata, right? Or you
I
want
don't
to
think
avoid?
in the democratic sense, I don't think it's nonsense, but it's just interesting how she was very quick to respond to it. So that's why I say I don't see it as tabata, but it's really interesting to me.
So there you have the vice president facing the Short People Association.
Oh, I know that guy. I have a picture with that guy.
So my tabata of the week is the transport workers at the transport ministry. They were demonstrating or protesting, sitting down. And the police first, the police started being violent to get them where they were seated. They said they were blocking it. And my tabata is that they called the minister of finance to talk to them. So I'm thinking, what if there's another demonstration in Banga, another one in Feasible, another one in Vubadi? Is the minister going to run there to talk? That to me, the way we solve problem, that to me is my tabata of the week.
Dysfunctionality at the best.
For Evers Morris, he said his tabata is Costa backtracking on his claim that Jeremiah Khan is a hard man. Yes, he said the man was selling human parts. So when he apologized, according to what he wrote, I don't know if he backtracked that statement.
He did not backtrack. He said the comment was unfortunate. I read it.
Yeah.
We have to be careful. Costa did not retract that statement. Costa
Right.
said, I made an unfortunate comment. That's what he said.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So his statement that this man deal in human parts still stand.
Yeah.
Baton Kula say Dr. Douglas Matabata is that our leaders act like adolescents. They don't take national issues serious enough. It's all about jolly and deposited in the red bank and not deposited in the future of Liberia. Yeah. I saw one more Tabata. All right. So that's the Tabata we have for the day. At this time, we are doing well with time here, I hope. We're going to take our closing comments, on the issues that we discussed today, and then close the. I really appreciate your time, gentlemen, for coming on Tough Talking. Always, you talk Thursday, we talk tough. Mr. Gonglo, your closing, sir.
Well, thank you, Dennis. I'm happy that we ended another chapter today with Dr. Du and Mr. Cannon. But we discussed this evening very important issue for Liberia. I know many issues are important for our country, but in the election year, Liberia actually needs everything. And we need our leaders to put their thinking cap on, to put Liberia first now, not just concentrate on what will happen on October 10th. Because I think, unfortunately, our people are beginning to act. They are in the mode of addressing only October 10th. I do not want to be part of a process that will replace George Weah with anybody for the sake of replacing George Weah. George Weah is not the only person who does not understand how to govern. There are many also in that country. So I don't want to replace George Weah with any of those people because it's going to be, the leadership curse in Liberia has become a vicious cycle that you replace one bad government with another bad government, So we have to find a way to depart from that. And for me, what I see on the horizon it's actually sad that when I even listen to the most educated people, brilliant people that I know, they all talk about money. They all talk about money. It seemed like I said to somebody last week that, oh, if you say you want this person because the person is a millionaire, the person who controls the biggest purse in Liberia today is Joshua. He controls the central bank. He controls the business community. He can tell them, hey, I will give you tax waiver for this number of years. Give me $10 million or do this, do that. He has the biggest money. Then they just keep him there because he can actually empty our coffer to make sure that he's re-elected. But I think we should look at what is missing or what has been missing for a long time. How can Liberia set an agenda, have a leadership that will be like the likes of Roland, that will put the country first, that will be fearless, that will look at the future, that will begin to even review some of the so-called, what you call concessions in Liberia to actually be a concession that reflects the long-term interests of Liberia. That is what we need to have, okay? But the whole thing about being on the extreme, when one government will just go to the extreme and say, even the cat said, let the cat take over. Cat is not going to take over and do any better than the dog that was there or the goat that was there. No. Let's look for someone who is better than the cat. We should not say, oh, we don't want this person, even that the cat, let the cat go there. And that's what I'm hearing. And it's very unfortunate. That makes me feel sad.
Thank you. And in case you are wondering why I'm in my Sino t-shirt today, just my Sino jersey. And I always told you my dream job is to become superintendent of Sino County. And here is my plan. I'm going to take I'm going to have like-minded superintendent in Grand Jita, in Maryland, in River G, in Sino, and also Grand Crew. And then that will lead the way to an economic community of southeastern counties, so that whether you have row or not, we're going to create haven in the southeast. So whether you don't want to come there, you'll come there at your business.
Wow.
Mr. Cannon.
Good dream.
Mr. Cannon, what's your tabata of the week? What's your closing comment?
Before I go to the closing, I would just want to invite you to join me in the advocacy for decentralization in Liberia, because you are not going to achieve that dream without some form of decentralization. If we implement the Local Government Act that gives authority to these counties to generate their own money, to do their own budgets, to do their own planning, I think that kind of collaboration can take place in the Southeast, because we are different. You don't have population like other counties, but you have resources. You have very good beaches and other things that you can use as economic resources to be able to develop. So I just want to invite you in so that we can try to see a way how we can improve governance by decentralization. But back to the issue.
Decentralization is coming up as a topic right here on Focus on Liberia. Keep tuned. Go ahead, sir.
I'm waiting for it. On the issue of my conclusion, like I said, back in 2017, this whole issue of the agreement was more like a homegrown initiative. And like I said, the Governance Commission did a lot of research and they knew how critical that election was. So they led this process. I don't know to what extent this one was driven by national actors, because eventually the signing and everything, we had the UN, we had ECOWAS, and like I said, they've been our partners. I don't know if it was developed by national actors and they were just at the signing, or they developed this by just using the model that was there in 2017. But in the end, I think all of the other team members are saying that, okay, all of the violence that has taken place has been masterminded by the CDC, the president, the other political parties should not have signed. But I think what it does happen, if you look at it from the other angle, is that it is entrapping the president himself. Because if he signs onto a document and say his party is going to be peaceful and the government is going to be peaceful, and they do something contrary, then of course they themselves have defeated that time and energy that it took to go and sign that document. So I think we have something as citizens. As a citizen, I want it to be peaceful, that we can hold not only the ruling party and the government, but all of these political actors. On the issue of the National Elections Commission issue, we already highlighted, we said we all made a point that let it not be the end. Relieving her of her responsibility or firing her should not be the end. I think there needs to be some investigation around this so that the Election Commission can try to make sure to help people to be able to have confidence in the whole process. On the issue of the government officials, like I said, the code of conduct, let me clarify this. The point I wanted to make was that it is only those who want to run for political office. That's where you see all of the energy that, oh, you are running and therefore resign. But the code of conduct is broad enough to cover all of them, and we should try to enforce that. But overall, like I always say, we as Liberians need to understand that we have a sovereign country, and it is our responsibility to run that sovereign country. Let's not always go out to other people. I mean, it was interesting when the Unity Party even was demonstrating they were going to international partners when they had a case in the Supreme Court. So the more we agree that we have a country and we need to run it, the better it is for us, and the more we improve our governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, get a last word.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I've add much to what, my two colleagues have said. Kane and Gonglo did pretty well in summarizing our ideas that we express here, and thanks to them. But I think, as a nation, Liberia has to stop looking at it, selling itself cheap. Because every time you run outside to go present your problem to someone, you're making yourself look small. It's like you don't have an adult in the country. Liberia is full of philosophers. It's full of lawyers. It's full of every kind of person you can imagine in the diaspora at home. There's no problem we cannot resolve as a people. Just sit down and look at the man face to face and say, you know what, this is what we want. Go to a restaurant, go have lunch, go to a committee room, whatever it is. But don't go in the street and yell at each other and then go write a small paper and go push it into an embassy and say, come resolve our problem. We have to take possession of this sovereignty. If you are a sovereign nation, you have to, the first thing of sovereignty is you take care of yourself. You know your problems, you know how to resolve them, you know who is the problem, you know who has the solution. And this normalization of dysfunctionality, that dysfunctionality is becoming like a normal. Oh yeah, we can do this. Oh yeah, this is Liberian way. Oh no, yeah, you guys doing this in America. No, it's simple. You live in a country, you got 4 million people. You want to choose a leader. You got to know who lives where, who's where. You don't need 10,000 people. And I would say even to the Election Commission, all you need to know, train people to how to use computers. You can use all this system. You don't need to hire a person to $10 million contract with some foreign company to come and do it. But we have to trust ourselves. We have to trust ourselves as a nation, as a people, and say, we trust our institutions. We trust ourselves as people. And we trust our political leaders to take the fight where it's supposed to be taken. And I think, we have a lot of work to do. And the work starts with saying, Liberia is Liberia, and only Liberians can fix Liberia. Not ECOWAS, not the UN, not the USA, not whatever. And that comes to a price. And the cost of that, I think, is dialogue. Sit and talk to each other. Say, hey, come, let's sit and talk. This is the problem. You are the problem. And I say, yeah, you are the problem. Then we discuss who is the problem and who's not. And then we find a solution to it. But if we can't do that, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be writing memos and memos to embassies, and every day, and 2055, we will still be doing the same thing.
Thank you, Dr. Duke. Thank you, Mr. Gonglo, and thank you, Mr. Khan. I want to also thank our viewers for staying here. Even those who will watch later, always watch Focus on Liberia. This is the only platform where we treat a variety of issues. Continue to follow us throughout the week on all social media platforms. Until then, we end with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.